The Life of Guts, Berserk. Guts, renowned as the Black Swordsman, is a former mercenary and branded wanderer who travels the world in a constant internal struggle between pursuing his own ends and protecting those dear to him. At one time driven solely by his will to survive, Guts finds purpose in life upon joining the Band of the Falcon, greatly helping in the faction's storied successes during the 100-Year War as captain of the band's raiders. He eventually becomes dissatisfied with clinging on to Griffith's dream and departs from the band in pursuit of his own. Following the horrors of the Eclipse prompted by Griffith, Guts embarks on a 2-year war against the God Hand and Apostles. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Guts. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media accounts. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Background. Guts was born from the corpse of his lynched mother underneath a hanging tree, where he was left to die alone in a mire of blood and afterbirth. A mercenary group led by a man named Gambino eventually happened upon the grisly sight, presuming the infant to be dead. When the baby began wailing, to the surprise of the mercenaries, an acquaintance of Gambino's, Shisu, immediately took to the child and came to his aid. Gambino allowed the woman to keep Guts for her own personal consolation, despite the circumstances of Guts' birth being considered ominous by his cohorts. 3 years later, Guts' surrogate mother contracted the plague, dying as he watched on. Under Gambino's tutelage, Guts began honing his swordsmanship at 6 years of age and joined the mercenaries band 3 years later, looking up to his leader as a father figure of sorts. On the night following Guts' first skirmish, a mercenary named Donovan ambushed and raped him in his tent, revealing he bought the boy for a night from Gambino. In the following skirmish, the young mercenary isolated Donovan and eliminated him, refusing to believe the man's claims from the previous night. When Gambino lost his leg in battle, his relationship with Guts immediately deteriorated. From verbal to physical abuse, Guts was subjected to various forms of degradation before Gambino eventually made an attempt on his life. Possessed of the notion Guts was the reason for his misfortune, Gambino revealed he did indeed sell Guts out to Donovan, voicing his disgust for the boy's existence. Heavily disheartened by this revelation, Guts retaliated and killed his assailant, the closest thing to a father he had ever known, eventually being discovered by and enlisted as a child soldier in another mercenary band that happened upon him. Meeting the Band of the Falcon. During the siege of a military garrison defended by the Band of the Falcon, Guts joins the fray alongside a mercenary band and narrowly defeats an enemy leader named Bazuso, lowering the enemy's morale and allowing for the fort's capture. In his travels, he's attacked by falcons seeking to claim his reward and exact revenge for his earlier interference. He easily dispatches most of them until he's met by Griffith, who quickly incapacitates the swordsman and has him brought to the band's encampment. Waking several days later, Guts is given by Griffith the option to join the band, though he promptly refuses, instead opting to challenge Griffith to a duel. He stipulates that the White Falcon can lay claim to him in the advent of defeating him in combat. Harboring a vested interest in Guts, Griffith agrees and the two engage in a sensational battle, with the White Falcon ultimately defeating the swordsman and enlisting him as a member of the Band of the Falcon. Encountering Nosferatu Zodd. In 3 years' time, Guts is promoted to the Band of the Falcon's Raiders captain, and for their efforts against the Black Ram Iron Lance Knights, the band is formally recruited by Midland in its century-spanning campaign against Tudor. At a later point, amid seizing a Tudor stronghold, the Falcons find themselves at a standstill while making their final push into the fortress, with roughly 50 of Guts' soldiers being slaughtered by a single enemy burrowed within the inner citadel. Fed up with these results, Guts ventures into the citadel himself, where he meets the monstrous apostle Nosferatu Zodd and engages in battle with the demon. Initially taken aback by his opponent's overwhelming aura and daunted from parrying Zodd's bone-rattling strikes, Guts ultimately gambles his life on one swing, and with it, lands a gashing blow on the apostle. Zodd is only further excited by the injury, having after 300 years finally found a human capable of injuring him, and subsequently assumes his behemoth-released form. Petrified by Zodd's transformation and completely outclassed, Guts is thrashed around and nearly crushed by the apostle, before Griffith and the Band of the Falcon reinforcements intervene. When Griffith comes to Guts' aid, Zodd blocks the two's path of escape, forcing them to execute a pincer movement on the apostle, in which both of them deal substantial damage to the demon. In retaliation, Zodd tail whips Griffith into a column, though he immediately ceases his onslaught upon sighting Griffith's crimson beherit. The beast leaves Guts with a prophecy, warning the swordsman of an inescapable death that shall befall him should Griffith's dream ever collapse, before flying off. Precious Thing. During the autumn hunt in Windham after the return, the Band of the Falcon acts as the King of Midland's guard in place of General Julius's White Dragon Knights. In midst of the hunt, Griffith is shot by a stray arrow, but avoids injury due to his Beherit taking the brunt of the blow. On a night sometime after Griffith, having deduced Julius as the culprit behind the murder attempt, asks Guts to kill the general in retaliation. The swordsman invades Julius's manor in the dark of night and swiftly eliminates his target. When the door to the general's room opens, Guts, assuming it to be a guard, pierces through in advance, killing Julius's son Adonis. With the guards alerted, a distraught Guts battles his way off the premises and escapes through the Windham sewers. Making his way to Primrose Hall, where Griffith is set to be in attendance, Guts rendezvous first with Casca, and together they overhear Griffith giving his interpretation of a true friend to Princess Charlotte. With the conclusion of Griffith's monologue, Guts leaves the scene, vexed by the implication that he too, ultimately, is nothing more than an asset to the realization of Griffith's dream. 100-Man Slayer. The Band of the Falcon shortly after sets out to combat the Blue Whale Knights of Tudor. During the engagement, noticing the trouble Casca was having with the enemy commander, Guts intervenes and does battle with the spearman Adon. Upon candidly defeating his opponent, the Raiders' captain notices a fainting Casca staggering off a cliff edge and breaks her fall, before he's shot off his horse and subsequently the cliff by a desperate Adon. The two falcons free fall into the river current below, with Guts pulling them ashore and finding them shelter from the chill rain. Believing Casca to be feverish, which he soon realizes is actually her menstrual cycle, he removes her drenched clothes and re-warms her with his body heat while waiting out the rain. When the rain finally ceases, Casca wakes and immediately attacks Guts, flustered by her womanly shortcomings as a soldier. Subduing and tiring her out, Guts asks why she became a mercenary to begin with, to which she explains the reason for her idolization of and devotion to the White Falcon as his sworn sword, as well as the jarring effect Griffith's desire for Guts had on her. Their conversation is interrupted by the movement of Tudor troops near their location. Realizing enemy forces will soon home in on their area, they decide to depart after sunset. In the midst of their escape, the two falcons are surrounded by a swarm of Adon's troops. Together, they mount a counteroffensive, with Guts eventually killing Adon's brother Samson. Acknowledging Casca's weakened condition, Guts decides to stay behind to buy time for her escape, telling his comrade to return to her metaphorical swordmaster Griffith. The Raiders' captain, in an arduous battle, is able to defeat all of the Tudor troops in the forest, single-handedly killing approximately 100 soldiers. After Guts is found and carried to a Band of the Falcon encampment, he reveals to Casca his admiration for her, Griffith, and the rest of the Falcons' commitment to realizing their collective dreams. Furthermore, he reveals he doesn't feel his place with their campfire of dreams, strongly alluding to his forthcoming departure from the band. Battle for Doldrey. With his injuries nearly completely healed, Guts assembles in front of the fortress of Doldrey alongside the rest of the band. Their goal? Recapturing the fortress for Midland. Griffith splits the Band of Falcon's forces into two, one group accompanying him and Guts to lure Tudor's forces towards a river, and the other an infiltration force led by Casca to retake Doldrey itself. When the Falcons successfully lure the Purple Rhino Knights to the river, Guts engages in a fierce duel with General Boscone. No sooner after Boscone's defeat, the victory cries of Casca's unit roar on from inside a recaptured Doldrey, as Band of the Falcon flags wave in celebration. With the loss of both their general and the fortress, the remaining Tudor forces scatter in defeat. The Band of the Falcon receives a profusion of praise from Midland's citizens and officials alike upon their triumphant return, and a victory ball is held in celebration. Guts attends the ball in spite of his aversion to the aristocracy, to see the culmination of the band's achievements, but also in order to help Griffith enact a scheme to do away with political adversaries of the White Falcon. He serves in tying loose ends of the ploy, killing all of Griffith's accomplices to avoid potential complications in the future. Morning departure. 1 month later, having aided tremendously in the Band of the Falcon's success, Guts finally sets out to leave the band, unable to cling to Griffith's dream any longer. On the morning of his departure, Judo, Corcus, and a frantic Casca intercept him as he leaves Windham, with the latter two taking him to a tavern to query his reasoning. There, Guts reveals he wants to attain a dream of his own, and stand beside Griffith as a man of equal vision. After a fierce reprimand from Corcus and solemn farewell from Judo, the latter sees him off before the two are intercepted at the outer wall of the city by Griffith and several other Falcons. Griffith questions if Guts truly intends to leave the band, to which Guts confirms his intent. Rattled by his affirmation, Griffith draws his sword and demands that Guts duel for his freedom as he did 3 years prior. Unmoved by this antagonism, Guts draws his sword and clashes with Griffith, breaking the White Falcon's blade in a single swing and leaving his former leader kneeling in defeat. On the night of his departure, at his campfire, Guts is met by a Skull Knight, who warns of an eclipse set to take place in a year's time, before vanishing into the night. A year after. Roughly a year following his departure, Guts enters a combat tournament hosted by a Midland noble and offers to fight a foreigner named Silat, proposing he would provide the tourney winner with better competition, to which the man accepts. Evading the rapid strikes of his opponent, Guts is able to overpower Silat with relative ease and win the bout. The amazed tournament host offers Guts a job while alluding to the Band of the Falcon's continued activity with Casca as their new leader, much to the swordsman's surprise. On a night soon after, Guts is able to track down the band's location, intervening in an enemy raid on the band led by Silat, defeating the foreigner once again and forcing Silat and his forces to withdraw. Guts is met with open arms and notified of Griffith's capture and year-long imprisonment, the band's newfound status as enemies of Midland, Casca's terrific leadership, and the Falcon's plan to break Griffith free. He's later taken away by Casca to a waterfall where she expresses her anger for his decision to leave a year prior. Emotionally drained from her struggles as a Falcon, she lets herself fall off a cliffside in a suicide attempt, though Guts saves and embraces her, leading to the two making love. Rescuing Griffith. Following Guts' return, a rescue team is formed to free Griffith, and in 3 days they infiltrate Wyndham through the sewers. With the aid of Princess Charlotte, the group is able to make their way to the ancient Tower of Rebirth, where Griffith is said to be held. After a deep descent to the lowest prison cell beneath the tower, the party members are appalled at the sight of a crippled, flayed Griffith, a shell of his former self. Overcome with emotion, Guts hugs his fallen comrade, unaware of Griffith's feeble attempt to choke him, before mercilessly killing the tower jailer responsible for the White Falcon's ravaged state. Fighting their way through a wave of alerted soldiers, the rescue team is able to re-enter the sewers, thwart an ambush by Bakuraka assassins sent to kill Griffith, and escape Wyndham to a farm outside the city. Eclipse. At the Midland border region, the remnant band members come to terms with the gravity of Griffith's injuries and discuss their futures. In a tender moment with Casca, Guts is urged by his lover to leave Griffith's side once again if he's to truly fit Griffith's interpretation of a friend as the White Falcon described at Primrose Hall. Without warning, Griffith, having mustered enough strength to commandeer his resting carriage, flees from the area, with Guts and the Falcons in pursuit of him. When Griffith wrecks the carriage and lands in a lake, Guts and the others rush to his location. As soon as Guts reaches him, however, the Falcons are all whisked away to an alternate dimension by Griffith's returned Crimson Beherit. Numerous anthropomorphic beings welcome the band members to the nocturnal feast they refer to as the Eclipse, much to Guts' shock. 4 profound entities emerge from within the dimension afterward, introducing themselves as the God Hand and revealing the purpose of the Eclipse, for Griffith to offer his comrades as sacrifices in order to join their divine ranks, as has been preordained by fate, proving to indeed be an inevitability. Griffith, having weighed his options as an invalid and reaffirmed his dream and ambition, offers his former comrades as sacrifices, therefore triggering the branding and unilateral slaughter of the Falcons. Guts fights relentlessly against the ravenous demons, bloodlusted by the merciless feasting on his friends. Eventually, he's restrained by one of the demons biting down on his left arm as a bared Casca is summoned by a reborn Griffith, rechristened Femto, who proceeds to rape her. Even after severing his arm and managing to free himself, the struggler is immediately pinned to the ground and forced to witness his lover's violation, all while the restraining demon slowly gouges his right eye. After Femto finishes with Casca, the Skull Knight from a year ago breaches the Eclipse, proceeding to retrieve Guts and Casca, evade Femto's space-distorting attacks, and escape the temporal junction with the 2 unconscious sacrifices in tow. Having been brought to Godot's cave, Guts wakes 4 days later to the sight of a mentally regressed Casca. He immediately runs away to a moonlit valley only to be met by specters attracted by his brand, and again by the Skull Knight, who informs him of his fate as a branded inhabitant of the interstice. The struggler formally declares war on all of demonkind, hell-bent on exacting revenge against his enemies as the restless spirits begin to flee soon after. The Skull Knight warns that the spirits have merely found another torch in the darkness to feast on, alluding to Casca's endangerment. The two move with haste towards her location, and upon arriving, witness a specter-surrounded Casca giving birth to her and Guts' demon child, the infant having been tainted by Femto's violation of Casca before it fades away into the astral world at sunrise. After roughly a month of training back at Godot's, Guts sets his sights on combating demonkind, brandishing a new set of armor along with a cannon-equipped artificial arm in place of his severed left arm. He retains the enormous broadsword and embarks on a war against the Inhumans. Black Swordsman Arc. For 2 years, Guts continues on his warpath against demonkind, becoming renowned as the Black Swordsman in his hunt for apostles. He eventually makes his way to the town of Koka. Upon arriving in the town, he immediately makes his presence known by killing several Koka thugs in a tavern, leaving but one victim alive to send word of his approach. The Black Swordsman has come. He also unintentionally makes an invaluable ally by freeing an elf named Puck. Receiving word of the Black Swordsman's presence, the bloodthirsty Snake Lord rides through Coca in search of his aggressor, burning down everything in his path and leaving a trail of corpses in his wake. Guts eventually intercepts and does fierce battle with the Snake Lord, eventually incapacitating the Apostle and interrogating him for the God's Hand's whereabouts before leaving him to burn into cinders. Binding Chain. In time, the Holy Iron Chain Knights catch up to the Black Swordsman, revealing the horrors they believe to be his doing, as well as the prophetic warrant for his detainment by the Holy See. Heavily injured from his previous encounter, he's able to muster only enough strength to ward off most of the attacking knights before being overwhelmed by their vice commander Azan. Realizing he lacks the strength to combat the entire regiment, he attempts to demoralize and disrupt the knights by eliminating their inexperienced head commander, Farnese, but is incapacitated by their attendant, Serpico, and subsequently detained. Guts is taken to a Holy Iron Chain Knight's encampment, where Farnese attempts to force a confession from him through interrogation, though he remains unmoved and only mocks her hollow religious devotion. Later during the night, Puck frees him from his cage and restraints, allowing the swordsman to reacquire his gear, take Farnese hostage, and escape the encampment. Naturally, he's pursued by spirits drawn by his brand, the miraculous nature of which he uses to further deride and shake Farnese's belief. When Farnese runs off and finds herself at the mercy of a possessed, lustful horse, Guts is reminded of Casca's during the eclipse, and is then filled with enough pure rage to combat the possessed animals until morning. Serpico soon arrives at their location and, after a brief exhibition with Guts, leaves with his charge. At a later point, while resting atop a hill, Guts' demon child appears before him, imparting to him a vision of Casca burning at the stake, as well as a vague description of her potential location. Indeed, upon returning to Godos, he finds Casca has gone missing, and from Rickart's learning of the city of Albion, the refugee camp Midlanders were flocking to in light of the recent plague, where he gambles his lost lover might be. Birth Ceremony. Journeying to Albion, Guts is cut off by a group of Bakuraka scouts, and in retaliation swiftly eliminates them, unexpectedly earning the admiration of the wandering young thief named Isidro, who follows him thereafter. He's intercepted by the Skull Knight, who warns him of an impending mock eclipse set to return he who signifies the Falcon to the physical world. Upon arriving in the city, Guts immediately begins investigating Casca's whereabouts, and with the aid of Puck and Isidro, pinpoints a cultist den where she has been taken. Amid the chaos of battle between possessed cultists and the Holy Iron Chain Knights, Gus leaves Casca in Isidro's care before engaging a goat-like pseudo-apostle, slaughtering the transformed heretic and escaping the den through a back exit. As he makes his escape across a cliffside, his path is blocked by Serpico, who, having anticipated Guts' approach, uses the precarious situation to his advantage and makes an attempt on the inhabited swordsman's life. Serpico underestimates the Black Swordsman's sheer reflexes and brawn as Guts grabs and shatters his assailant's blade, forcing the weaponless herald to flee. Afterward, rendezvousing with Isidro, he learns the young thief failed in escorting Casca, having allowed the Holy Iron Chain Knights to capture her during their escape. Having returned to Albion, Guts is able to infiltrate the Tower of Conviction and intimidate Farnese into leading him to the monastery's underground torture chamber where Casca had been taken. With no sign of his companion in the chamber, he ascends the tower and proceeds to ambush 7 pseudo-apostles. Holy See Inquisitor Mozgus and his 6 disciples, the former of which is carrying an unconscious Casca. The swordsman manages to defeat 4 of the pseudo-apostles after a hard-fought battle. Mozgus and his 2 remaining disciples are able to escape with Casca still in their keep. After the tower's partial collapse, Guts is dismayed to witness a city-scale brand of sacrifice enkindled across Albion, as well as the impending burning of Casca in an ongoing witch trial affair. Making up for his earlier failure, Isidro is able to rescue Casca from the stake as Guts, diving off the collapsing tower, pierces a flying Mozgus. The pseudo-apostle transforms into a bestial armored form only bearing 2 weak points, his mouth and an exposed area near his upper sternum. Exploiting the aforementioned areas, Guts is eventually able to fell Mozgus, but not before sustaining significant damage himself in his punishing bout with the Inquisitor. A massive tidal wave of Albion's manifested pain and anguish suddenly sweeps over droves of present refugees, taking the lives of myriads in its passage. While most retreat to what's left of the monastery, Guts, along with Puck, Isidro, Farnese, Serpico, and a knight named Jerome, mounts a defensive, lighting torches for himself and the others to deter the waves of malice until dawn. Before long, the monastery is completely engulfed in a swarm of tormented souls. This results in the complete collapse of the tower, as well as the realization of both the living and dead's ultimate desire, salvation, achieved through the sudden breaking of day and consequent eradication of the Dark Torrent. The survivors are abruptly attacked by an onslaught of Kushan. Not long after, they're met with the arrivals of Zodd and the Skull Knight, the latter who directs their attention to a concentration of light in the distance. Initially enthralled like all around him, the sight of the reconstituted Griffith quickly enrages Guts, momentarily driving him to attack before he realizes he's once again on the verge of leaving Casca behind in pursuit of revenge. Instead, he mounts a Kushan horse with Casca in tow and sets out for Goddo's abode, as Zodd whisks Griffith away. Reunions. Guts learns of the blacksmith's death and is asked by Erica to stay at the hut together with her and Casca. Though he initially considers the offer, when the girl tells him of a silver-haired visitor conversing with Rickard on the Hill of Swords, he rushes to the hill in discomposure. Atop the hill, he meets Griffith, who confesses his complete apathy towards sacrificing the band of the Falcon while standing on ground serving as tribute to the sacrificed band members. This revelation incenses Guts, spurring the Black Swordsman to lunge for the White Falcon. The strike of his Dragon Slayer is blocked by an intervening Zodd, and a fierce battle between him and the Apostle begin. As Goddo's mine is destroyed by Zodd, Casca runs into the fray, almost crushed by the ensuing wreckage if not for Griffith saving her. Griffith's seemingly involuntary protection of Casca gives him pause, compelling him to take off with Zodd, but not before leaving Guts with a resounding declaration. Following Griffith's departure, Guts explains to Rickard the reason for his rancor toward the former leader, revealing the details of the Eclipse. When Rickard asks to accompany him on his journey, the swordsman refuses, stating Rickard could never truly hate Griffith. With the destruction of Goddo's mine, and therefore a lack of secure shelter for Casca, Guts sets off in the winter with a new destination, Puck's homeland of Elfhelm, where Puck states Casca would be safe to stay. In his journey to Elfhelm with Puck and Casca, Guts alone wards off the innumerable evil beings attracted to his and Casca's brand. One night, after momentarily falling victim to possession by such spirits and strangling Casca, the relationship completely fragments. Thereafter, Casca bears only animosity towards and fear of him. When she begins to linger away, he binds her hand and begins pulling her along by rope, though she one day manages to escape and wanders off into a group of lustful thieves. When Guts finds her, he arrives to the site of the slaughtered thieves and a naked, blood-covered Casca who attempts to strike him down in anger. Restraining Casca, he forces himself upon her in a moment of subjugation to his inner darkness, before coming to his senses, damaging the relationship even further. Later at a campfire, Puck returns to Guts, bringing with him Isidro, Farnese, and Serpico. Farnese asks to accompany the swordsman in his travels, revealing her recent secularization and newfound search for truth. Uncharacteristically, Guts welcomes their fellowship, shaken by his earlier displays of malice and fearful of what he might do to Casca if left unchecked. Mansion of the Spirit Tree. In the midst of their journey, while venturing through a forest in the direction of Vritannis, the group stumbles upon an injured Enoch villager named Morgan, who, in light of recent troll attacks on his village, was looking to solicit the aid of a witch said to reside in a mansion deep within the forest. They agree to escort Morgan back to Enoch, during which they themselves stumble upon the mansion Morgan spoke of, having, by way of Guts' and Casca's brands, breached a hidden interstice barrier in which it was located. After a brief skirmish with golems guarding the grounds, they're welcomed by a young witch named Shirke, who escorts them to the mansion of the Spirit Tree's mistress, Flora. Having anticipated their arrival, Flora offers to create talismans capable of suppressing the effect of Guts' and Casca's brands in exchange for the party assisting Shirke in resolving Enoch's troll threat. The group is able to protect Enoch from a troll invasion due significantly in part to Shirke's convening with the Lady of the Depths river spirit and washing the invaders out the village. When the young witch temporarily becomes mesmerized by her astral mergence with the spirit, Farnese and Casca are lost to the waves upon falling into the current. Shirke comes to her senses too late to end the flooding in time. With the clearing of the village and end to the expunging flood, Guts, Isidro, and Shirke set out to locate Farnese and Casca, leading them to the Troll's Den, the astral world's region of darkness, Qliphoth. Qliphoth. Deep within the depths of Qliphoth, Guts and company are able to find and locate Farnese and Casca as they're swarmed by trolls, as well as free numerous Enoch women and children being held against their will. Opting to stay behind to combat the troll horde by buying his retinue time to escape, Guts, for the first time in a while, is left to his own devices, unmitigated by the need to protect others. Amid his release of ferocity on the trolls, from the intestines of those he has slain materializes Slan, a member of the God Hand. He lunges to attack her, but is only blocked and restrained by the angel, who, delighted to meet him again, envelops the swordsman inside herself before opening a gaping slash on his chest, all in an attempt to coerce his use of the Beherit in his possession. With the timely arrival and intervention of the Skull Knight, Guts is able to, with his malice-tempered Dragon Slayer from the malice of the innumerable astral beings slayed with it, run through and dissolve Slan's assumed form. Slan's abrupt disappearance has adverse effects on Qliphoth. resulting in its instability and gradual collapse. The Skull Knight unveils his Sword of Beherits, and with it sends the multiplying swarm of arisen trolls and ogres into the abyss, thereafter returning Guts to Shirke and Isidro. With the subsequent shunning of Qliphoth and his reunion with the others, Guts realizes after a long interval of time devoid of camaraderie, he once again has people he can call comrades. Donning the Berserker armor. While returning to Flora's mansion to report their successes, Guts momentarily collapses to the ground, having acquired an astral wound on his chest from the laceration Slan dealt him earlier. No sooner after Shirke reveals a sudden breach of the mansion's barrier, Guts' brand begins to bleed profusely. Reaching the mansion grounds, the group witnesses the blazing spirit tree, as well as the multitude of invading apostles on the premises. Guts is aided yet again by the Skull Knight, who assists him against the apostles, primarily in support of Flora. The two are eventually met by Zodd and his fellow apostle Grunbeld, the latter who proclaims to be, along with the other invading war demons, a warrior of the Band of the Falcon, a revelation which shocks Guts. Initially gleeful due to having found a presumably worthy opponent in the Black Swordsman, Grunbeld becomes dissatisfied by Guts' weakened showing of strength and decides to eliminate him. With Shirke's aid, Guts is able to narrowly withdraw into the treasure chamber beneath the spirit tree, where his companions clad his injured body in the Berserker armor. With the sedation of his pain and overwhelming capability bestowed by the armor, the resurgent Berserker is able to decisively outclass Grunbeld in battle, even against the Apostle's released form. As the fight continues, he begins losing grasp of his ego, becoming enthralled by the immense odd of the Berserker armor coupled with his inner darkness. Only after Shirke dives into his subconscious mind, wherein she reminds the turbulent swordsman of who he is, does Guts regain hold of his ego. Flora, in a new existential form, then returns to obstruct Grunbeld, paving the way for the group's escape. Roar of the Sea. After nearly a month, having slowly recovered from injuries sustained in his previous battles, Guts and his companions set up residence in a seaside cabin on their way to Vritannis. One day, the Skull Knight appears before the swordsman on the moonlit shore, warning of the influence and toll taken on the users of the Berserker armor, as well as informing him of Elfhelm's ruler, the Flower Storm Monarch, who potentially possesses the power to repair Casca's mind. After the Skull Knight vanishes, the group is met by a mysterious boy who appears seemingly out of nowhere and displays a particular interest in Guts and Casca. While sleeping, they come under attack by crocodile familiars being manipulated remotely by sorcerers afar. Serpico is able to find and eliminate the hidden Kushan spellcasters, but following this success, the group is attacked by a giant Makara. Guts engages the beast, only to be overpowered to the point of once again surrendering to the Berserker armor. With the power of the armor, the Berserker is able to swiftly defeat the beast. Having dispatched all of his initial targets, the turbulent swordsman turns his gaze towards his companions. Before he can attack, a childlike luminous body appears in his subconscious mind, reminding him they are not his enemies, and making way for Shirke to again free Guts from the armor's influence. Vritannis. Finally arriving in Vritannis, the group begins looking for a ship to sail to Skellig, but to no avail, as most of the city's ships have been commandeered in the Holy Sea's war effort against the Kushan. Wanting to be of use to her companions, Farnese sets out to reunite with her Vendimian family in the city, who in return offer to provide all of the party's sailing expenditures as reward for Farnese's safe return. Sending Puck and Evalera to perform reconnaissance on the Vendimian's residence and learning of the gentleman's courting of Farnese, Guts concludes that she's intended to be engaged as collateral for getting them a ship. Curious of Farnese's true desire, and not wanting to lose Casca's primary caretaker, Guts endeavors to attend a wartime ball to meet with her. In their attempt to gain entry to the ball, the group is met with difficulty due to the heavy security on the premises. Shirke is in time contacted by Serpico via thought transference, who waits for them at the rear entrance of the ball. When they arrive to the colonnade chamber at the rear, Serpico, rather than helping them gain entry, brandishes his sword and engages Guts in a duel, leery of Guts' inability to control himself as a berserker and believing Farnese to be safer away from the swordsman. Using the pillar-strewn chamber to capitalize on Guts' impeded movement, Serpico is initially able to hold his own against Guts. The swordsman eventually destroys all but one of the pillars within their immediate radius before subduing Serpico with the falling debris of the remaining pillar in range, thus mostly assuaging the attendants' fear by not resorting to using the Berserker armor. Guts and the others enter the ball as tiger familiars begin mauling Vritannian nobles and Holy See officials. At Farnese and Shirke's behest, the swordsman reluctantly stays to help slay the beasts and avert further casualties. He then asks Farnese if she truly desires to return to the aristocracy, to which Farnese jokingly states she merely missed and wanted to briefly revisit her former life. Soon after, the mist cloud of the Apostle appears before the partygoers, introducing itself as Emperor Ganishka of Kushan and making a formal declaration of war against the Holy See Alliance. Realizing strife will soon befall Vritannis, and having made a new ally in a ship captain named Roderick, and inadvertently in Farnese's brother, Magnifico, Guts and company leave the ball for the port to set sail abroad Roderick's warship. To their dismay, the group witnesses a horde of the Kushan's Pishacha army upon reaching the port. Through Shirke's summoning of the God of Woe fire spirit, Guts' controlled use of the Berserker armor with assistance from Shirke's luminous self and Serpico's sylvan assistance, they're able to eliminate the Pishacha horde as well as defeat the Kushan leader controlling the beasts. Enraged by Daiba's failure, Ganishka materializes and strikes his subordinate as well as Guts with lightning. After Guts is beckoned to join the Apostles' cause, having impressed the Emperor with his exceptional might and resilience, and defiantly rejects the invitation, the Apostles of Griffith's reborn band of the Falcon enter the fray just as the Emperor readies to deal a final blow to the swordsman. Headed primarily by Zodd, the Falcons unleash an airborne attack on Ganishka, but to little effect, with the Emperor subsequently striking them all down from the sky. A struck Zodd is sent beelining into a rafted Guts, with the swordsman thereupon resurfacing on the flying Apostle's back. Atop Zodd, he forms an uneasy alliance with the Apostle and is able to pierce through Ganishka's ethereal body with the Dragon Slayer, forcing the Emperor's mistform to dissipate. Following Ganishka's defeat, the exhausted swordsman nearly provokes Zodd into further confrontation by inquiring of Griffith's whereabouts, therefore suggesting his animosity toward the Apostle's new leader before clarifying his disinterest in their affairs. Zodd, having decided to settle their score at a later time, leaves with the other Apostle Falcons, as Guts and his party board Roderick's seahorse and set sail for Elfhelm. Elfhelm. Finally reaching the island of Skellig, they're promptly met by Skellig sorcerers, including Archmage Gedfring, who escorts them to his manor in Elfhelm. Eager to restore Casca's mind, Guts immediately requests to meet the Flowerstorm Monarch, though Gedfring advises the swordsman and his companions to first rest and unwind from their long journey. The next day, they're guided through Elfhelm by Gedfring and the Archmage's attendant, Danan, to the Flowerstorm Monarch's Spirit Tree Palace, where Danan transforms into and reveals herself to be the sovereign of Elfhelm. Danan informs Guts she can likely mend Casca's regressed mind by using the Corridor of Dreams. However, she requests only Shirke's and Farnese's assistance in doing so, voicing that Casca's fear of Guts would only impede the process. To that end, Guts leaves Casca in the care of the young sorceresses, while he and the rest of the party wait out the ceremony. After the ceremony is complete, and Casca is successfully restored to her former self, Guts returns to see his reawakened companion. The mere sight of the swordsman triggers Casca's memories of the Eclipse, causing her to scream in horror. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.